Welcome back to another episode of the Ekko Cast. Here we have the man, the myth, the legend, not the CEO, but the owner of Ekko. I don't even know what the difference between owner and CEO is. I used to call you CEO, and then you would say, "No, I'm the owner." What's the difference?
So I guess when the owner is so big that he steps out and then potentially puts out an employee essentially.
So you could make somebody a CEO,
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So it's like the cut above.
Yeah.
All right. So it's a status move. I get it.
That's one of the reasons why I never, I don't want to take a partnership is because even if it's 5%, then it becomes like, hey, we need to talk about this to make an ultimate decision. In this case, of
Right.
since it would be like a little power move, I guess.
That makes sense. So one thing that I wanted to discuss with you is obviously Ekko, especially when you compare it to other supplement companies, other brands. Ekko has taken off a lot faster than a lot of other companies, and it just continues to make moves forward. So I wanted to talk through with you, what are some of the differentiators that you see that have made Ekko so successful? I want to talk through has the growth been linear? Has it been a bit of a roller coaster, up and down? Like, what sort of things have sparked growth, and what sort of things possibly people who are looking to start their own brands could take away from that? So I guess the first thing that I would want to ask is, what was the explosive point that took Ekko from being entirely unknown to at least on the map? What would you say was the first thing that caused that?
So obviously we have to be self-aware. We're definitely not, while we are growing exponentially compared to other brands that are doing fantastically, we're nowhere near as they are, right? But at the same time, we've definitely made some very good moves that play to our benefit in the sense where we can definitely call ourselves a very profitable and very successful D2C brand.
Well, what was that term?
It's direct to consumer.
Direct to consumer. Got it.
So a couple of the moves, actually, we used to be wholesale, so we had some accounts that we pulled out because what was happening is, let's say you guys and the athletes are promoting Ekko to this status, right? And then those wholesalers essentially utilizing, because they knew how to properly utilize search engine on Google, they were becoming the first person when they typed in Ekkovision. So they were purchasing from them instead of, let's say, Ekko. So they were taking our audience. So I pulled the trigger completely. I'm like, I want to be the only source that sells Ekko.
Okay.
So one of those reasons actually also I do feel like it played a factor. But now it's like more people want Ekko. It's like because they can't have it.
But I'm saying let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
it's like
you're looking way down the road. I'm saying, what took Ekko from being a company that nobody has ever heard of? What was the first rise in popularity or people knowing who Ekko was? Like, what move would you say that Ekko made or that you made that caused that?
So we started on TikTok, right, and essentially posted videos after videos. And I made the reason for starting this project very clear, essentially out of hatred for other brands, in the sense where the prices that they were charging for very, very subpar formula to me was just not fair. So then what was happening is like, hey, instead of making all those videos, you should make it yourself. So usually a lot of creators, when they talk about it, they probably don't have enough saving to act on it. In my case, because I was around, 25, had a relatively good job, I had some savings. So one of my biggest checkpoint I already marked, which is the house. So now I'm like, hey, on to the next journey. I don't know what that was going to be. In this case, I have some money. I'm like, okay, let's do some research. How much would it be to take that step? So when people saw that I was actually taking those actions, I start to build a little bit of even though not a lot of following count, but decent bit of people that actually believed in it, that it was going to be something. So even before I went live, I didn't necessarily expect any of you guys to join Ekko. I thought it was just going to be myself, my project only, and then that's out. So the approach was like, I'm going to post 1,000 videos if I have to, every single day, spam it left or right until I see some sort of direction.
Did you start reaching out to athletes, or did they reach out to you?
So we've had people that reach out to us. So one thing I'm not very good with socializing, so I get nervous about reaching out to people. For instance, Steve Knable was somebody that I wanted to reach out to. I was super nervous. I'm a fan. I'm like, how do I reach out to them? And then you have other bigger brands that they're probably getting offer from much greater offers. So I'm like, I don't want to embarrass myself with a embarrassing offer. So I would have a hard time reaching out. Usually it's like if they come to me. So one thing I did is like, hey, I have an open invitation system. Anybody could sign up for a code. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what, let's say, necessarily like, which is a bad thing to do. Like, hey, I don't care what you post, as long as you have to, if you think you can bring sales, come to Ekko if you wanted a code.
Well, I remember at one point or another, you had a crazy number of code owners.
We had more than 4,000. So it's just like, so there's a lot of small creators. So the thought process was like, there's a lot of small creators that wants a code with the brand, but they don't know how to get it properly. Or they'll have, let's say, one thing we did was like, you have athletes typically from other brands will get, let's say, 15% off versus affiliate get 10% off for their audience, not the commission. So I did that the way around. So the athletes will get higher commission, but everybody has the same exact discount value. This way, the bigger athletes, so let's say if you have a smaller account, and if you have a small account, and if I offer, let's say, 20% discount for their audience to a bigger athletes, why would they use the small person's code? Sure, they're small, they already don't have the following, and they can save more money using the bigger creator's account. So this created this effect where like they trusted me more. They're like, hey, he's actually for the little guys too, rather than just like strictly focusing on the athletes. Like, and then also we told them like, hey, as soon as I have the capacity to pay you guys more, I will pay more. So on the first launch, we paid them roughly around $3 per tub. Then we increased the cost by $2. I was like, I literally said to my audience like, hey, I don't think it's fair for my athletes to make $3. I'd like to pay them more. So I'm going to charge you guys $2, and that $2 will directly go to my athletes,
right? Because
you guys are consuming their contents, so you cannot be, upset about them making money. Some of them, at that time, one of my goal was if I could change somebody's life, one person's, I'll call it a success. So, it's just like, this is going back to Baxter, for instance. I hated the idea that he was working in a gym for like $12 an hour. Like, I hated that. I was like, nope, you're not doing that. And another thing, I guess, like I made it more about the formula than the taste. So people sort of, for a good value, they knew that, again, one of the approach was like, I just wanted to showcase the ingredient that I was putting in, that we, as a new brand owner, you have to sort of fight through to get the rights to use trademark ingredients. With every step of the way, I would showcase like, hey, I got denied to use that ingredient. But hey, after like, let's say a week or so, I give them an update. Like, hey, we finally have the right to use this ingredient. So they felt more of a journey than
right. Well, I think that was one of the things that really caused Ekko to stand out from the crowd was you would show receipts for different things.
Yep.
And I remember seeing it from the outside and thinking, ooh, I don't know if that's a smart idea. Do you want everybody knowing your business and stuff like that? But up to this point, it's been nothing but positive from what I've seen, because even though it seems a little, seems like you're just putting your heart on your sleeve out to people, it seems like people are receiving that really well. And I know for me, like, because I always wanted to work with a brand that was super open, super confident in what they were doing, and actually not trying to trick their audience in any sense. So that was one of the things that drew me to Ekko. But when I see how many other people have also been drawn by that same thing,
yep,
it's been just incredible to see.
Yeah, I myself, because I've had people that were like close to me that told me not to do that, not to show the cost. But what was happening is I wanted to justify it. At some point when you're getting onto this market, people are going to be doubtful. People started to comment, even though I was showcasing my formula and comparing. I can't really compare to other brands because the same complex doesn't exist. So you can't do, A to A comparison. So I was like, okay, at that point, this has cost me $25 in raw ingredients alone And if you don't think I should, as a business owner, I should make, let's say, $12 to $13 per tub, you can, if you're good at math, you can kind of identify my margin right from the get-go. So now if you can't do the math, then that's on you. Maybe go back. You should maybe go to pay a little bit more in school. But you can clearly see that I'm making no more than $12-13 per tub. Now, if for a business owner, for myself, that if you don't want to see the second version of Ekko, then say that. Then I don't want your money. So that was the approach that I took, and people really enjoyed it. They're like, absolutely. Like, I think if I want to give anybody money, that would be you.
And I think that was the first place where you started to stir a little bit of controversy, and Ekko has really thrived within different controversial issues.
Yep.
The one that I noticed first off, I don't know if there was any that came before this, but the first controversial topic that I got involved in or that I noticed within Ekko was dethroner, and the fact that you had people saying if it's actually as stacked or has as many ingredients as he says, then he can't be selling it for the price that he's selling it for.
Yeah.
And I feel like more than anything, dethroner, it was a statement more than anything else,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So remember, on the first pre-workout, that was the daily driver, very affordable. I was making, let's say, $10 to $12. So my thought process wasn't like, okay, since I'm spending $25, I'm making $10. The thought process wasn't that if I'm spending $40 for this, the cost was literally $39 for dethroner to be out.
Just
right?
to make it?
To make it, yeah. So the thought process was like, if I'm making $50, all I have to make is $10 more profit for me to be in the same shape. That was a bad end for me because, like, to produce dethroner, it's going to cost a lot more capital.
Right.
That's something I didn't take into account. But my thought process to them was like, hey, as long as I'm making $10 to $12 per tub, I'm good. So, which is why we sold it for $65. So it was like, okay, I'm going to pay my athletes 15%. They get a commission, they get a discount. And then as long as I'm making that my $12 to $13, I'm good. I'm in a good shape. I'm profitable, maybe not as much as profit. But then that's when those, let's say the veterans in the industry, literally, they essentially made public posts where like, hey, there's no way that he's putting those ingredients, which makes no sense. If like, why would I be risking my getting essentially, sued by those trademark people, and I'm just new guy? It would cost me way more headache to steal rather than just paying them their fair share. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's like, it made no sense. And I would see their, people would showcase of like, oh, now he's putting in fake ingredients. There was a brand owner, actually, direct competitor. He went live and essentially said my ingredients seemed fishy.
Yeah.
So luckily, somebody sent me a screenshot of it, or actually a screen recording of it. So I have it for just in case if I ever want to take legal action. Obviously, I don't want to, because it's just bad for business image. So it's something, it's just better you not to take action on.
Right.
Right. However, if it comes to that point where like, hey, if they need to be humbled, I usually keep some sort of safety money for that purpose.
So you have a little black book of different things that you can use at different times if you need to.
I almost have a drive. This is like genuinely speaking, because this is genuine. I see supplement world being a little bit too cutthroat environment, so I just try to be as ready as I can, just in case. Because I do know for a fact in fitness industry is like people will be nice, but ultimately it's just like to a degree. I've had a situation where people were super, super nice initially, and as soon as they ultimately saw me as a threat, and I became like, like I said, the cutthroat environment.
Yeah.
And then I saw those posts. I'm like, I'm this like new little kid, 150-pound kid, and you guys should be happy these products are being out there for your audience. But then I noticed the tone being like a little different. Then I'm like, okay, I need to keep myself a little safe, because it's ultimately me against them, feels like.
There's a lot of people out there that will smile on the front.
Yep.
And then they'll be trying to take action underneath. And I know I've experienced that, because there are certain people, certain companies that have reached out to me to try to sue me for various things, or at least threaten lawsuits. And I'm sure it's been the same for you.
I've had few. But one thing I learned, I have a very good team that's backing me to the point where they've been through this already. So when I bring them the situation, I'm like, hey, what's happening with this? They're like, oh, no, he's probably just trolling. We recently had this situation, and when I told them, like, hey, could you take the concern to, if you want, I can get my legal team involved. That person immediately folded within 2 hours. So like, hey, no need for legal actions. I just want to speak to you.
Well, the first time it happened to me, a person reached out and basically said, hey, I'm just warning you that I could sue you. And I was like, and it freaked me out. I was scared. I postured at that point. I pretended like it didn't bother me, but deep down I was just waiting. I was like, oh, this is gonna. Yep. But it's if you're ever looking to get into an industry like this, you want to make sure that you have things logged, things filed, and cover yourself. Cover yourself as much as you can, because anybody can sue you for anything at any time. That doesn't mean they'll win, but no matter what, it's going to be a headache.
One thing is, I almost made myself a target because I was showing those prices, because the industry margin was
it made everybody else look bad.
Yeah,
because they can do the math now. They can take a look and say, wait, if this costs exactly,
it's almost the same formula, if not worse, then means it's going to be even cheaper for them to produce and at a larger scale. So if anybody that can do basic math, they can just say, okay, this pre probably cost them $10 to produce, and they're selling it for $60.
Well, somebody sent me the numbers on the amount that certain ingredients costed and these different pre's, and they'd broken it all down. And I started looking, and I'm not going to name names, but various supplement companies, I was taking a look at the margins they were taking on their products, and I was like, it's highway robbery.
This is something we take pride. So you asked, like, what are some of the points that Ekko elevated? So to answer your question, it was never a linear progression. It was more like a linear progression to a point and then a little slow down, but then we introduced something else that gave us a little bit more exponential growth. So a little bit dips here and there. So one of the things so Dethron gave us huge publicity, very good publicity or bad publicity from our competitors, but we got through it. And the next battle was like, hey, during that time, creatine's price, for instance, was like through the roof. And I didn't, as I found out, what the cost to produce it, I was like, okay, literally every other brands are taking that much of a margin. And people in my comment section were saying that they would not take creatine because of how expensive it was. It was just not worth it. So I'm like, oh, then let me look into this. And what I noticed is, like, people are almost setting the margin. It's like, if everyone's getting away with it, I'll do the same. Maybe like, the delta being $1 or $2, then we're still in the good shape. And I'm like, okay, no, if I'm going to do something, I need to do something different. So the way I went with creatine is like, I'm going to make at most $4 per tub. So if I sell 1,000 tub, I make $4 in profit. So to do that, I need to beat, let's say, Amazon's price. How do I do this? That's when I was essentially stressing out. I'm like, if I'm going to be introducing it, I have to do something different than other brands. Everybody's done it. We don't want to become every other brand. That's when I asked you guys. I was like, hey, I want to sell creatine at a cheapest price on the market. Would you guys be okay with taking no commission?
And this was and that was one of the other things that really represented the culture of Ekko.
Yep.
And the thing that made it so different from everybody else is when Em asked us this, he just straight up said, like, if we're gonna make this move, then that means that you guys can't be taking commission on creatine. And every single one of us who was in this conversation, we said absolutely, because we knew it was for the benefit of Ekko, and that is not something you see very often. If a company asking the athletes to take a hit when it comes to the financial stuff, but yeah, it was no issue for us at all.
The beautiful part was, like, so at this point, we already have a somewhat good relationship with you guys. So I knew for a fact you guys would at least consider it before saying no. I was more nervous about my affiliates. Remember, we have this 4,000 codes, right?
Right.
And we sent the same message after getting approval from you guys to them, and they said the exact same things. People wanted to see Ekko succeed so badly.
So
like, I would much rather have my audience get it cheaper. So we introduced...
That didn't even cross my mind that it would go that same thing would be going out to all the affiliates. Usually I just thought of it from our aspect.
If the thing because you guys are my key players, obviously we want to bring it to you guys' attention. But at the same time, I still have a responsibility for my affiliates to be letting them know. So I send math emails. So I'm like, hey, whatever, we just, usually I'll say like, hey, me and my team. So when I say my team, I usually refer to you guys. That we were we brought up this concept, and we believe it's going to be fantastic because for growth of Ekko and your audience, rather than just like, hey, we're trying to make the money. I straight up told them, like, on average, this is what my math is. This is what my net margin is going to be. And that's going to be utilized for Ekko's growth. So the $3 to $4, I'm not going to be taking for myself, rather just putting back for Ekko's growth to introduce new products.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. And people are just like, we're literally behind you. And it's like to this day, they're very, very supportive. I had like, on that matter, I don't think I've had any single individual saying, hey, you're taking money out of my pocket. I don't like that. No way did.
All right. So question for you. One of the most common questions that I get from the audience is, how can I become an Ekkovision athlete? Like, how can I be somebody who becomes a part of Ekko? So to anybody watching this who's trying to figure out how to become an influencer, somebody who can financially make money off of this, I know your approach is a little bit different, but how would you say the best way of moving forward for somebody who wants to become an Ekkovision athlete would be?
So I have this foundation that may not be the greatest thing now. It's like, hey, anybody that can bring me sales. So it's kind of like almost devaluing some of the bigger athletes. Like, hey, if you have the capacity to bring sales, you're in pretty much by default. That's obviously like a little bit bad mentality. Now we want to be a little bit more selective, and just because as Ekko is growing, I realize how much the image matters. But the initial thought process is I just want them to be humble, because let's say I know for a fact, if somebody has the capacity to post every single day, they are bound to be successful in TikTok. TikTok is such a huge platform. If you genuinely do learn and adapt, it's not just like you're posting the same thing that's not working. You just shove more of that. It's not going to work. But I see the mentality where people are trying so many different things to find out what clicks. And you can kind of see when they're like trying so many things, and then something's peaking, and then they try to follow that up with another video of the same manner, and they do better, and then they change that direction to accordingly. I like those kind of people. Humble is probably for my personal one, because I want to see that this is a journey. My audience, I made so many mistakes, so many questionable mistakes, which is why I'm like, how are we still in business? I always get into fear. I'm like, we're gonna be out of business because people are gonna hate us. But people backed us. People have been part of this journey, and we want our athletes to be part of that journey. There's going to be downfall where if we have to take hit, they have to be willing to take that hit rather than them being worried about a couple $100. And that's the kind of people I'm like, I would much rather not have. If they give us, a lot of times they're pretty open, like, hey, they
People that give you grief.
Yeah,
What you're saying.
they'll like throw numbers. So when they throw those numbers, you can kind of indicate like, okay, he's most likely more worried about the salary than anything else. In that case, we're just not a right fit. And so that's one thing I've done since the beginning, was if somebody came in with a salary in mind, that I was able to just like respectfully, I'm like, hey, I don't think we don't do salary. Remember with you guys, we couldn't do salary for 8 months, and the fact that you guys still played the part of the journey. And one thing I knew is like, hey, if somebody is giving me that respect, I'm going to make sure I pay back that respect.
Mm-hmm.
However, unfortunately, you'll have the other brands, they hire the athletes more so for the advertising aspect rather than the sales, because they usually have, let's say, wholesales. So as long as those videos are getting a lot of views here and there, and if it's a mandatory video and you're delivering, they're going to get that benefit regardless of you actually generating sales. In my case, like, you have to generate revenue for me to stay in business. It's not even just like you know.
Have you ever had athletes who you've brought in expecting them to generate certain levels of revenue, people you've had to let go, or maybe even bring back the amount that?
Yeah.
How have you handled that aspect of things?
We've had great success in terms of a lot of athletes actually hitting goals compared to the other brands, from what I heard. Obviously, I don't have their analytics to confirm. However, if they don't hit their goals, usually my approach is to, let's say, part ways. My initial reaction is, if they are trying, I want to sort of fight for them to myself. Again, I'm trying to make it like, remember, as an owner, I'll stress out about my money being wasted because I'm not getting the returns. So, however, if the person is a very good person, they're humble and they're trying, then I almost like fight with myself for them. That I want to find out. Ideally, if somebody's asking like, hey, how can I get better? I'll usually sponsor giveaways so that they hit their marks. I've had situations where athletes didn't hit their goals, so we introduced a signature product. The thought process was, hey, if they have their signature product, they can push it better. Like, hey, I built this product, and then it worked. For a lot of them, essentially, even though they were not hitting goals, when they had their signature products, they hit their goals and more. We've had situations where, let's say, athletes, right now, for instance, athletes that are not hitting goals exactly, but they're like somewhere close. So I know for a fact I'm not going to just let them go because they're still an asset. But if you add non-humbleness on top of them not getting goals, that's when I can't defend them to myself, because I almost like feel like I'm talking to myself as like trying to fight for that individual. Right. So if they're, let's say, if I don't see the point where they, again, to be fully blunt, right now, Ekko just did 8 figures. So I know for a fact, like, we're roughly getting bigger. So if somebody's going to give me, let's say, a couple $100 issue, then I have harder time, backing them quite a bit. So it's at that point, if they're not hitting their goals, I can't wait to get out of the contract, because we usually have a 4 months contract. And if they don't hit goals, I'm like, okay, if you didn't have my back in that manner, then I don't know if I can go beyond the ball for you. Yeah. At that point, it just becomes straight up business.
But I've definitely seen you with individual athletes where what you've done is you've actually bridged the gap when they weren't hitting goals,
right,
and allowed, or even brought your standard down just a little bit from time to time, and it's one of those things where I've been privy to situations that a lot of other people haven't, and been able to see kind of the background, both sides of things. And I know for somebody like you, because you have a big heart, it's been tough to make certain decisions when it comes to certain athletes, whether they're a good fit for the company or not. And you always run the risk of those people going and spreading their side of the story on social media, and that can, is that something that stresses you out?
It stresses me very, very much out, because Ekko is pretty much all I have, so it gets very emotional. And the thing is, and even more bluntly, it's like, Ekko is so big that I feel like I can't say it, because it's going to make me look immature, and I become in a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
And it's not going to equate that much more value. More importantly, I have people like yourself, people like Ryan George, people like, very, very big names that I look up to before Ekko, and somehow are part of Ekko. So now I have even more pressure to like really hold myself together, and I can't just make hasty decision. Like I said, when I said I have a drive of like my receipts, I legitimately have drives of receipts on so many occasions.
I keep the same.
I was just like, I'm very organized in that matter. I'm pretty organized with my like numbers quite a bit too. So it's like, if I ever need to pull up my numbers, I know for a fact that I'm not just like referencing. It's just like, but I can't, because
it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah.
I understand. And there's been times where I want to go to bat for you and say, I've seen the situation, I know what's here, but ultimately sometimes you can't post everything online because you don't want to get into a firestorm.
Yeah, and it's just, again, mainly for like, what if I seem like immature to you guys?
Yep. You don't want to be petty. You want to make sure that you're professional, but I wish we could talk further in depth about some of those topics, but we want to keep it PG rated for you guys. But appreciate you coming in and telling us a little bit about how things have gone, and we're definitely looking forward to bringing more for you guys later.
Peace.